Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. I am free, free as a bird now, with my feathered wings.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming to the Camino Cafe. I'm so happy that you are here, and it's a beautiful day in Ravenel. It's sunny. I'm looking out, no pilgrims walking by right now, but they will be because there have been people walking every single day, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I'm so happy to have Rocco Rossi here with me today, a Canadian pilgrim, and you've probably heard his podcast on Dan's podcast, and that is a remarkable episode. So I hope that you will check that out as well. And I think, we all need to support everything that we pilgrims are doing to talk about the Camino and to record this rich history that we're all a part of. So you all know Dan's podcast, so please check that out. But Rocco, welcome. Thank you for coming and being willing to chat and tell your stories.
Oh, thank you, Lee. I mean, it's not a willingness. I need my fix. I've been jonesing for the Camino for 2 years now as we've been locked down here in Canada, and what you do and what Dan does and others to keep the spirit alive and keep giving us injections of that spirit is just so meaningful.
Yeah, Thank you for saying that. And I just feel so lucky and blessed to be able to be a part of this history gathering. And, Dan's got big shoes to fill. And, I'm just trying my best to keep my spirit alive too. So, and I do that through these stories because I think the Camino is just that amazing. And when I heard, when you first reached out to me and you said, I've walked the Camino, I think it's 13 times?
Different,
yeah. Right?
Yeah, 13 different versions.
I have an incredible fascination with people that have walked multiple times. I've been lucky to have walked portions of the Camino Frances twice. And, it's moved me so much that I moved to Spain. And when I meet somebody that's walked multiple times, I think I walked with several people during this last Camino that had walked around the same number of times that you have. And I find it fascinating. So I'd like to start there and just kind of, if you could just share, what your opinion is on, we're called one time to walk. But what makes us walk again? Why do we keep coming back? Why do you think that happens?
Well, you're a yoga instructor, and you know that one of the initial greetings in a beautiful Hindu tradition is to say namaste. And namaste is literally, I bow to you. But because within the Hindu faith, it's believed that we all have the spark of the divine in us, it actually can mean the spark of the divine in me recognizes and bows to the spark of the divine in you. And that's available all the time. But on the Camino, you drop all of your masks, all of the barnacles that cover us each and every day, and we get to see the best in one another. And that is very magical and very empowering. And for me, it becomes a way of re-energizing multiple times, and that's what makes it, it turns from a passion to an addiction. And I almost feel like a Camino addict, and can't wait until the next time.
Yeah, maybe I should rename this, the Addicts Camino Cafe, right? Like we definitely are addicted to it. And I agree with you. I think, when I was walking, that was one of the reasons that made me come back, is I had been so down, and I felt that light within me, and that it still existed under the layers of things that I was going through. And it was easier to feel here than it had been to feel in my own life.
Exactly. I mean, that magic, we are all creatures of the divine. We all participate in it. But it's hard in our daily lives, yes. Because of everything, because of the duties that we wear, the responsibilities that we have, the appointments. There's a wonderful Psalm 46 that begins, "Be still and know that I am God." Mm-hmm. And the gift of the Camino is that stillness, which is so hard to find in daily life. And so that is on offer to everyone.
Yes, absolutely right. In listening to your story on Dan's podcast, you talk about what first made you walk. And then that was really, I think, dealing with grief from what you talked about. And I too walked for that reason. And so I wonder if we could kind of start talking about, in your opinion, why is a Camino so good for someone that maybe is trying to process grief? How did it help you? And how do you think it could help others?
Well, again, processing requires stillness, requires quiet, requires separation from the day-to-day grind. And for me, I was in the lowest moment of my life. I was really lost and in grief for my mentor who had died while we were traveling together. And I certainly wasn't able to process that in the ways that I'd always done before, which is when I encountered difficulties, I buried myself in work, right? You double down in what you're doing. And that is not incredibly helpful or healthy. And yet once I got onto the Camino, both in terms of the processing time and also that processing isn't all internal. It's also these incredible encounters that you have with other pilgrims along the way. And as you've remarked, and your guests have remarked in so many podcasts, the depth, the immediate depth that conversations go to allow you to process and think through and have sounding boards to help you think about it in a way that would take decades of therapy outside the Camino experience.
Yes, most definitely. So on that first walk, did you walk the Frances?
I did. I had planned to start in Roncesvalles because I wanted to do it within Spain. And so my flight got me to Pamplona. And when I got there, I realized that there was only, and this was 2002, there was only one bus from Pamplona to Roncesvalles, and it was late in the day. And I'd arrived early in the day, and I didn't want to wait around, and I didn't want to stay in Pamplona because they were preparing for the San Fermines, for the crazy festival they have every year with the running of the bulls, and that's all great, but a town of 200,000 turns into 1 million revelers. And that wasn't what I was in Spain to do. So I wanted to get out of Dodge as quickly as possible. And so I just started, I got to the cathedral, got my credencial and started walking west and ended up going to Santiago and then Finisterre and then doing an extra loop. I wanted to walk back and ended up walking down to Muros along the Costa de Morte.
Wow. How much further was that? How many kilometers?
It's another couple of days from Finisterre.
Okay.
Because when I got to Finisterre, I still felt the need to walk and to process, and maybe a little bit like pilgrims of old, because when you got to Santiago or Finisterre, the Camino wasn't over. You had to walk back home. And I had heard, and I wanted to just relax for a couple of days, drink some beer and think about what had gone on. And I'd heard about this lovely little resort town along the Costa de Morte called Luro. Has a lovely beach, and so I walked down to it.
Wow. Well, Pamplona, I think, sounds like a fabulous place to start your walk. I mean, it's a wonderful city. And yeah, so tell me a little bit about how you had lost your mentor. And he was quite young when that happened. And you guys were in the middle of a very successful business venture and ready to celebrate great success. And um, tragically, he passes. And I can't even imagine what a terrible and difficult loss that was for you at that time.
Oh.
How long was it from then till you actually stepped into Pamplona?
Well, uh, when Don died, my mentor, we were traveling in Belgium, and we had put some of the pieces in place, and our part of the beer industry, we were going public, and we just presented to the board, and big celebration as only beer executives can celebrate, with the pipeline directly to the brewery. And he and I were to have breakfast the next day, only he didn't come down, and rang the room, no answer, checked at the desk, he hadn't left, checked with the office, no word. So I had them open the room, and he had died in his sleep of a massive coronary, age 44, 2 kids in school with my son. And my whole world melted down, because things that I thought were so important, and I was totally caught up in the dream, more money, bigger house, more stuff, all of that just was a lot less relevant when it could be taken away literally in a heartbeat. I put succession in place for my position and left shortly thereafter. Wanted to spend some time with my family, but I wasn't finding a path out of the hole I was in. And so I reverted to my old behavior, which is, when in trouble, work harder.
Right.
And so I got involved in a technology turnaround, and I literally spent a year after that restructuring a company and then selling it. And I was coming home from, so this is a year after, little over a year after Don's death. I went to the celebration dinner and was coming home, fat check in my jeans, offers to do more of it. And I was on the subway, on the metro in Toronto. And suddenly the grief just washed over me, and I just broke down and started crying uncontrollably in the subway. Everybody else in the subway, kind of like at the next stop, got out of their seats and walked out and moved to another car. I mean, I thought, my God, you're dealing with this madman. And there, literally on the seat beside me, was our local newspaper, the Toronto Star, and it was open to an article by wonderful writer Rob Crew of the Toronto Star, who had just come back from the Camino. And he wrote about, he had been processing some difficult things in his life, and he wrote so beautifully about it. And so the next morning, I tracked him down, called him and said, look, Rob, as it happened, I had been an executive at Torstar, so I knew of him and he knew me. And I said, look, I'd love to take you out to lunch. I want to talk about the Camino. You pick the restaurant. And so we had lunch within 2 days. And a week after that, I was on a plane to Pamplona. It was delayed by over a year of this restructuring work, and the succession time. But once it was in my mind, I was, within 10 days, I was walking. And that was the first I had heard of the Camino.
Wow. Okay, so much there that I think we can explore. And, what divine timing, what magical timing, however you want to refer to it, that your grief, grief always comes out in odd times, I find, right? In moments that we don't expect it to come out. And there you are on that subway. And then there appears this article. Wow. That's really something really powerful. I wonder, Rocco, one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about this is that, as a woman, I feel like I had a lot of support from girlfriends when I was going through my grief. And I always wonder for men, it seems that men don't talk as much. Maybe this may be stereotypical of me, but I wonder, during that year, did you feel like all of this was just kind of bottled up, that there really wasn't a way to express maybe some of this? And maybe if you could compare and contrast, maybe once you got on the Camino, did you find that it was easier to talk about this, or that there was more support to hear your story? Or what was your experience in those two worlds and dealing with grief?
Yeah, I mean, you put your finger on it. Look, I was raised that, you're supposed to be the strong one. I'm the eldest of 5 kids. I'm the only boy. And I've been very fortunate in life and played, sort of senior executive roles. And there's a reason they say it's lonely at the top, because people, on the one hand are envious of what you get in the corner office, but also everyone looks to you for the answers. They expect you're the one who's going to make the final call. And yet we're all broken vessels, right? We all have our pain to deal with. And I just didn't feel I could talk about it to anyone. And again, it's why, my response was to double down in work, in thinking, well, I'll just push through, and with time, this will deal with itself. But clearly, I wasn't dealing with it, and the emotional break in the subway really told me it was time. And my wife was 100% supportive, and my son, because they could see I was in a very bad way. And as you've remarked in your podcast before, it's like the message in the plane, right? When the cabin depressurizes, the masks drop down, and you have to put the mask on yourself first before you try to help anybody else. And that's what the Camino became for me, was that oxygen mask to allow myself to get better, to be able to carry on and help others.
So glad you found it, because that's a very hard place to be in. And you said something just now that I think about a lot on the Camino, is that I wonder in this situation that I feel like the Camino kind of equalizes us, right? Like, it doesn't matter what kind of big job you have. It doesn't matter if you have what you might think is a small job, or it's like we all are equalized on the Camino. And I wonder for you, by being able to let go of this corporate identity, having to be the big brother, all these titles that you carried, husband, father, and so on. Did you find that coming on the Camino did that for you? Did it equalize you to where now you could like share your story and not have to be all those things to everyone that you found you had to be during that year where you were doubling down and working?
100%. It's exactly right. That is the magic of the Camino, is stripping off those layers and getting down to the essence of what we all are. And in part, you're in a self-selected audience, right? Because others are there, many of them for similar reasons. And so they're open to it. And you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, rich, poor, old, young, you feel the sun in the same way. You feel the hills in the same way, the blisters, the weight on your back. And so it is reinforcing our common humanity. And it does open up those conversations, because others are also open to both listening and sharing. And so it gives you this permission. The Celtic culture speaks of places where the wall is thin between the world mundane and the spirit, right? And those special places, those magical places where the wall is thin. And the Camino is definitely one of that, but it's also about thinning the human skin. It's thinning the walls that we put up day to day. So that combination is very special for opening up to sharing, and then in my case, receiving those wonderful supports and messages back.
Oh, that is so beautifully said, Rocco. I love that. That thin space that we're feeling from what the Celts talk about, to the thinning of the walls that we've built around ourselves. How many days did you feel? So you start in Pamplona. Can you remember back on that first walk? Like, how many days did it take for you to start dissolving those walls, where you could let go of the Rocco that everybody at home knew, and you could just be Rocco, that internal light that burns within?
It started pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, literally 3-4 kilometers out of Pamplona, on my way to Cesar Menor, that little town that has the albergue with the big Maltese flag flying. And I'm going up the hill, and there was a young Spaniard, and I spoke only a few words, although I speak Italian, and so I was able to understand more than I can speak initially. But he was this fascinating pilgrim, because he had a small backpack. He had 2 plastic bags, shopping bags, filled with different things, and he was walking in flip-flops, and which I found so remarkable. And the contrast for me was massive, because I just tried to get out of Pamplona. I mean, literally, the city was bursting at the seams, and I was surrounded by people. So not alone, but incredibly lonely, right? Because in the middle of the crowd, it's really in the middle of crowds that I've felt the loneliest in my life. And then the moment I'm outside of town with no one else, and then this young man who turns to me and sees, I'm just kind of making my way. This is my first time, and I'd gone through the shock of all of these people, which is really what I didn't want coming. And he pulled a rice cake out of his bag, and said, "Aquí, buen provecho, have something to eat." And it was incredible. It was just the breaking of bread, in this case rice bread, with someone. But as you know, companionship, compane, is the way that you build those relationships. And so it started right in that moment, and it was really so wonderful.
Wow, that is really a beautiful story. Yeah, the moment of belonging, and here you're feeling lonely in this big city. It's having this big party, and you meet this guy minutes out of Pamplona.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. And so you kind of felt that the identities could start breaking down, and you could just now be a pilgrim.
Yeah, and I wasn't, some big boss in a big company. I'm just a fellow pilgrim with this young man with 2 plastic bags in a backpack and flip-flops.
Oh, that's great. Because I can just imagine, in your corporate world, people would probably be a little nervous to even bring you like a little piece of cake, And here you've got this guy handing you this simplisticness of it, and the love that he shared with you in that moment, that companionship.
Yeah.
That's the Camino,
Yeah.
over and over again. Wow. So you do get to go to Cruz de Ferro, I'm guessing, on that first walk. Cruz de Ferro, I have a great fascination with, and I wondered if you could talk to our listeners and viewers about what that first visit to Cruz de Ferro maybe was like for you.
It's enormous. I mean, you talk about places of thinness between the mundane world and the spirit world. That's number one on the list on the Camino Frances. And Rob, the journalist from Toronto, had told me about it and told me about the tradition of taking a stone from your home and then being able to place it on the Cruz de Ferro. And so I took a couple, and it was an important part of my healing, if you will, and the process. I had two stones. One was very much focusing on Don, my mentor, who had died, and trying to deal with that. And I would walk part of every day. I would have the stone in my hand, and thinking about that, and putting the pain into the stone. And the other stone I took was really focusing on my relationship with my dad, which had been complicated, let's say, growing up, but I wanted it to be better, and I wanted to be able to forgive myself for some things, forgive him for some things, put things into context. And so part of the day was with that stone in my hand. And as you know, the Cruz de Ferro is a wooden pole, an iron cross on top of it. It used to be a way marker before the yellow arrows. So pilgrims coming up into the mountains there could see it in the distance and use it as a way to come up the pass. And articles, and so you've got this incredible cairn of what is now millions of stones beneath this. And like, whether you're religious or not, the reality is that people have prayed and laughed and cried and bled into each and every one of those stones, and the residual power is phenomenal. And it comes in waves, because there is spirit of incredible sadness, and there's spirit of incredible joy, and it is really a very powerful and special place. And much as I now when I walk the Caminos, I try to go to ones that are far less populated, because the Frances can get crazy now.
Yeah.
It is something that continues to make the Frances incredibly special and important.
Yeah, most definitely. So that must have felt pretty powerful. I love the ritual that you had of carrying those stones, holding each one each day, and this process of trying to put the pain you were feeling about your loss.
And
what that must have felt like. Yeah, how did it feel when you laid that down?
Lee, it was incredible. It was incredible. I literally, I mean, I was carrying a weight many times the weight of the backpack, and that little stone, when it dropped from my hand, it was like this massive weight went with it. And yes, that was happening along the way, but it is a special place of grace.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's really a place that, like this ritual you're describing of carrying that rock and putting the pain into it and then being able to lay it down. What a great thing to put out there for other people that might be currently walking and needing to release something that is just that heavy.
Yeah.
I yesterday, as I was walking that direction, I didn't go all the way to Cruz de Ferro because a bit of a walk to go there and all the way back to my house.
Yeah.
But I was out walking and I noticed it was a little muddy yesterday, and there were these footprints, of pilgrims that are walking that day yesterday. And I kind of looked down and I thought, I wonder what they're carrying to Cruz de Ferro, and just feeling a lot of empathy and compassion to what I know can also be very heavy that we're all carrying there. And I wondered, and I knew that I'd be talking to you today. And I thought, I thought this might be a good time for you and I kind of chat about, this has been a hard time in our world. We've all had this collective grief, our own personal grief with maybe what's happened during COVID for us. And I just wondered if maybe you could speak to, for pilgrims that are getting ready to walk, why you think this might be a powerful time to do it after what we've gone through with COVID, and how maybe a Camino could help in processing what's happened to all of us during this year at various degrees. But no matter who you are, I think you've been touched in some way, just underlying stress of what this past couple of years has been like. So I wonder if you could just offer maybe some words of encouragement or how it could help us.
Well, it's a powerful question, Lee. I'm a huge believer in the observation that it is the Camino de Santiago, not the Camino a Santiago. In other words, it's the Camino of St. James under a field of stars, and not necessarily, although the church clearly wants you to make the pilgrimage to the cathedral, and but I do think it's important that it's the Camino de Santiago, because we are all under a field of stars everywhere in the world. We are all on the Camino as pilgrims in this life. It's just that in our regular places, those walls exist. And that takes us away from the understanding that, people talk about the magic of the Camino. There's magic everywhere in the world, right? Yeah. We are creatures of magic. We are creatures of the divine. We forget that. We have that obscured in our daily lives, and we've never had it more obscured in our lifetime than during these years of pandemic and social distancing. I hate the term social distance. Yeah. Physical distancing, I understand. We're doing it to control. We should never be socially distant.
I love that. Yes.
We are also social animals. We are herd animals, and we need one another. We feed off one another. And I think returning to the Camino will just be an affirmation of, yes, we are creatures of magic. And yes, I'm going to crank up my divine light one more time. I'm going to get and share and help to shed the pain and the suffering of the last couple of years, and reignite my belief and passion in all that is magical, because it's under the surface of that that we've all been living through.
I love the word you used of reignite. I think pre-COVID, maybe we would have described our walks as a reset. And I love your word of reignite, because I think it's an even more powerful reset, right? It's a reigniting of that spirit within us, the reminder that life is magical, because it's been kind of hard to feel that during
100%.
COVID, at least for me.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think that's a very aspirational and inspirational reason to walk after, when the time is right, when your country allows, when you feel safe, when it's the right time for you to come and reignite maybe some things that have been lost or have been pushed down so much during COVID.
Dimmed, never lost. It's there. It's always there.
Always there, dimmed.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow, thank you for that. I love that. So when we got ready to do our interview, I said, hey, send me a picture of you from your Camino, one of your Caminos. And you sent me two. And I've looked at them. It's always like, who am I going to be interviewing? I want to see his face. I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
And this morning, as I was getting ready to copy them and put them, get them ready for all of this, I was like, wow, why did he pick these two? Because there's just a look on your face in them, So for those that can't see them yet, or if you're not seeing them, there's one of just Rocco up close, and I love that. And then there's another one where you're with two women. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what made you select those two photos, and what was maybe going through your mind at the time those photos were taken.
Yeah.
And why were those photos the ones you selected to send to me?
Yeah. Well, I put the two because for me, they're the two dimensions of the Camino. One is what's happening to you and inside you. And the other is that it's made more powerful being with others. And so I tried to capture two moments to reflect that. And the one with the two women are two hospitaleras in the remarkable albergue of Arez, which is on the Camino Aragonés. It's the southern, as you know, there are four major paths that come in from France, and three of them connect just before Puente la Reina and continue on the Camino Frances. The southern route that starts in Arles and goes through Montpellier and so on comes over the Pyrenees, not at Roncesvalles, but at Somport, and then into the Spanish town of Jaca. So this is an interesting route. It was the route that those coming from Southern Europe, from Italy and so on, would take as opposed to the Northern Europeans. And I love the Aragonés because it is way less populated, but it has this remarkable little albergue in Arez, a dozen, 15 pilgrims, communal meal, and just spectacular spirit each time I've gone. And these two hospitaleras were just so generous and so welcoming. And it's a wonderful reminder because each Camino, all of the albergues have their specialty and their encanto, as you will. But for me, each Camino has one that's, particularly powerful. And, in the Frances, Gragnon for me is always rises to the top of my passions. The Aragonés, it's Arez. The Primitivo, it's going to Bodenaya. On the Norte, it's Güemes and Father Ernesto. And these are all kind of special places. And so those two pictures capture it. The one of me, I just, because my family remarked on it, and they just see joy. And that actually came after a particular moment of inspiration and joy, because I had just seen 4 pilgrims, and one of them was in a wheelchair, and 3 of them were helping to fulfill their friend's dream of doing the Camino, despite being in a wheelchair. And they had set up ropes so that they could pull the chair up a hill that we had just done. And the power of the love of that just reignited the spark in a very big way. And so that's a very special moment.
Thank you for sharing that. I felt there was power in those 2 photos, but never quite imagined how powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a moment, right? To see somebody I always think about the minute you start thinking you're all that, walking the Camino, there's always someone that's maybe having more challenge to walk. And
Oh.
it's amazing to me, the human spirit and what humans are capable of.
Yeah, when we ask ourselves, do you think you can do it? I mean, here was an example, incredible. I've seen, people who are blind, walking, with friends, with family, people in their 80s. And, it's, they're not doing 50 kilometers a day, but they're doing the Camino at their pace and getting what they need from it.
Exactly. And I think this is a great time for us to kind of validate for everyone that, there's always going to be somebody that's walked further than you.
Oh.
There's going to be someone that's maybe walking fewer kilometers. There's going to be someone that's stronger than you, older than you, younger than you. But we all do the Camino in the way that we need to, and what is serving us in the way that we need to do it. And, to drop the judgment around what's a real Camino, because we never know someone's story. And, I tell people there's a way for you to do this Camino. You just got to find, your way. And, wow.
I mean, there's always the debate, and and you've raised it in a number of podcasts of, who's a real pilgrim and who's a Tour de Grino.
Yep.
And I had this wonderful evening with a Belgian pilgrim in that first Camino in 2002, and in the little town of Lerigos in the Meseta. And he was in his 70s, and he said, Rocco, this is the third time I've walked the Camino. My wife has asked me to promise that it's the last time I do it, because she's afraid at my age that it'll kill me. And this is not a marathon running Belgian. This is a beer drinking, chocolate eating, barrel chested Belgian. And he said, but look, the two times I came before in my life in the 50s and 60s, in my 50s and 60s, I came to ask God for something. And now, age 74, I've been married to the same wonderful woman for 50 years. We have 8 children, 24 grandchildren. I've had this incredible career. And I'm here just to give thanks to God for the blessings I've received in life. And so, this guy was in a special place. Like he was really at peace with himself. And he said, Rocco, this debate between the pilgrim and the Tour de Grino, it's nonsense, because none of us can see inside what is real and understand. The tourist visits the Camino, but the Camino visits the pilgrim. And that's the only difference. And that can happen in a day. It can happen in a week. It can happen to someone with earbuds in their ears, or wearing every bit of Gore-Tex you can find, or just in jeans. Like, you don't know.
Wow. I could close this interview on that quote. That is, wow. That's a guy who is really in touch with what the Camino is.
Yeah. And it was a magical moment, because Lerigos at that time wasn't big enough to have regular albergues. So you stayed in people's houses. And this has since become, El Palomar has become an albergue. But I was sharing a room with Pierre. And I got up early in the morning because, as you know, and this was July, so the Meseta gets really hot, really hot. So I was trying to get out early to beat the midday heat, and I was trying to be quiet and not disturb Pierre, because it was 5 a.m. And he said, Rocco, don't worry, turn on the light. I don't sleep that much anymore, but at my age, I don't do the long treks, but I'm up, no problem. And so I got up, repacked my pack, and was getting ready to go. He gets up out of bed and comes, gives me a big hug, puts his hand on my forehead and gives me his blessing. And I just like float out of this place. I'm feeling top of the world. And I'm looking out west on the Meseta, and there are these really dark clouds in the distance. And but it is what it is. I've got rain gear, and so I start walking out, and I've walked for about an hour. I've done about 5 kilometers, and I'm now just a few hundred meters away from the cloud, and under the cloud, I mean, rain is coming down in sheets, and it is bouncing off of the dry Meseta.
And there's nowhere to hide.
And there is nowhere to hide. Like, there's no shelter. There's no way I can get back in time. So I just, you got to just suck it up. Or as my son put it when we did it once, embrace the suck. Embrace the suck. Put my rain gear on and head into this. And Lee, it rained on me for all of 20 seconds. And then I felt like an extra out of the 10 commandments, because the clouds split. And beside me on either side were sheets of water coming from the cloud, but not another drop hits me. I walk for half an hour, and I'm past the cloud, and it closes in behind me. And I turn around, and there's solid cloud and rain. And the sort of the rational part of your mind is saying, well, it was between 2 fronts, and it was a seam in the cloud, and no. But the other part, the hair at the back of your head is saying, no, you were blessed this morning by Pierre, and you were protected from this. And it's again, I think there's magic everywhere, but you get to recognize it up close and personal in the thinning places, both of yourself and of the physical space of the Camino.
Yes. Very, very true. Wow. I've been almost in tears. I can't tell you how many times in this interview. You've got some really beautiful stories, Rocco. And I'm so glad that you mentioned, as we began talking about these recent stories, you mentioned the supportos, the hospitaleros, and that's in that photo. And I often think about sometimes as we pilgrims walk, and maybe this is after living here for a little bit, that we forget about the people that support us and make it possible for us to walk. And, the people that live here in Ravenel, Jesus and Nati that work down at La Posada, and all the others. And I see the joy in them of supporting us. And I'm so glad that you brought them up. And that made me think about, as you and I first started, before we started recording, and you and I were just chatting, and you mentioned that some friends of yours opened a place on the Norte. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe give a shout out and say hi to them and kind of talk about what they're doing, because I know on the Norte, there aren't as many places to stay on a regular basis. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about their story and maybe just share with everyone, in case somebody's getting ready to walk the Norte, to know about the place that they have opened up.
Well, that's super. Look, these are family for me. We met years ago on the Primitivo and became lifelong friends. We ended up walking the Norte together as well, and they had a business in Madrid, and having walked the various Caminos, they decided to sell their business, and they were going to help in the Camino by setting up an albergue. And one of the things we remarked when we did the Norte is, look, there are some stages where there's a lot of gap between albergues, and wouldn't it be nice if there was something in between? So it's Marisol and Jose Luis, and they've bought a place in Asturias, near the town of Caravia, which is in between Ribadeseo and Villaviciosa. And the albergue is called Los Duesos. It's 12 beds. And they'll be opening in March, God willing. And they are full of the spirit of the Camino, being pilgrims themselves. And this is just a little bit, half a kilometer away from the beach and from the coastal route on the Norte. It's spectacular. They are wonderful people. And so as people think about doing the Norte, keep them in mind, because you're going to get phenomenal hospitality from people who get it, who know what pilgrims are looking for, and just lovely people. You know, you've often remarked the Camino doesn't necessarily give you what you want; it gives you what you need, and they're going to be people that give you both what you need and what you want, because that's how they're built.
And as a tired pilgrim, there's nothing better than to show up at a place with somebody that knows what it's been like to walk, right? They just have like a certain empathy for you and greet you in such a kind
well, and
way.
they have a garden there, and they raise chickens, so you're going to have, you know, fresh vegetables and fruit and pickled things, and it's really really going to be a special place. Look, if I can leave you with just one more story, and
please.
I know that we're going long, and as I said, you know, for me, this is an addiction fix. So
Me
thank
too.
you. But on the need and want, the Camino had one more lesson for me at the end of the first one in 2002, where I was dealing with the grief of Don's passing. And it came literally at the least expected moment, because, as I said, I'd gotten to Finisterre and then was going to walk a couple days south to Luro and spend some time drinking beer on the beach. And I had a walking stick with me that I had gotten actually just outside of Logroño. There's this incredible character who's been on the Camino for decades, Marcelino Lobato, and he's in the park just outside of Logroño. And at that time, now he's set up a whole sort of kiosk and booth and different things. But at that point, he was just handing out walking sticks for free that he had carved, and they were just simple sticks. But what was important, you say about all of the people who take care of you, you know, Marcelino is one of those guys, and at the top of the stick was carved, and it had his name. It had Lino on it, and I had taken the stick with me all across Spain. And when I got to Finisterre, as you know, the tradition, you burn something, some clothes, something that's with you. Some of the other pilgrims said, Rocco, why don't you burn the stick? And I said, there's no way I'm burning this stick. This stick is going back with me to Canada. I'm going to give it to my dad. He loves to carve in wood. You know, that was also part of the Camino, is dealing with that relationship. And so I was going to tell him stories about the Camino. He was going to carve into this stick. So I'm walking to Luro, and I'm a couple kilometers, maybe 3-4 kilometers out of Luro. And there by the side of the road is a little boy. And he has a garden hoe, and he is wailing away at the side of the road with this garden hoe. Whack, whack, whack. And I come up beside him. I say, buenos dias, ¿qué tal? How you doing? And he looks up at me, and he drops the garden hoe, and he grabs my stick. And I'm at a total loss. So I pull back, and I'm a big guy. He's a little guy, and I literally lift him off the ground. And he's and I'm losing it. I don't know what to do, but I want the stick, and get off my stick, and start shaking him, and then just so crazed in the moment, I start taking his fingers off of the stick, trying to get him to let go of the stick, and he's and I'm freaking out, thinking maybe the family is going to be around. They're going to call the police. I'm harming this young child for a bloody stick.
Oh no.
And I realize as well that aside from grunting, he hasn't verbalized in the whole exchange, and his face is distorted. And aside from being a young child, he's a young child with other challenges. And so it hits me like a flash of light, like, what, are you so far gone that you would harm a young, intellectually challenged child for a piece of wood? And so I stopped struggling. I put my hands on him, I said, regalo para ti, present for you. And he looked at me, and he looked at the stick, and he looked up at me, and he looked at me, thinking, we've just been struggling. Is this some kind of trick? And so I'm looming over him, this 6'4" guy over a small child. And so I tap him on the shoulder. I said, no, regalo para ti. And I take a step back, and he watches me take the step back, and his head lifts up. And it breaks into the most beautiful smile I've ever seen in my life. And it broke me like a baby. I'd walked 1,000 kilometers from Pamplona to Finisterre, and I was 5 kilometers from Ludo. I couldn't for the life of me walk another step. I was done. My Camino was done. But I was given that gift that, look, I had spent so much of my adult life accumulating stuff, getting a bigger house, getting the bigger car, believing in the bumper sticker that he who dies with the most stuff wins. And yet here was this young child who taught me that, and repeated the message that we all know, that it's not the material thing, it's what we do with it to help others that really matters. And it had brought so much joy to him that, I had been bringing the stick to him. And this was the lesson that the Camino needed to give me.
Wow. So many things in that story. I mean, I think all pilgrims, I know maybe somebody that hasn't walked the Camino might be like, what is going on here? Why is he so attached to this stick that he picked up in Logroño? But I think for all of us that have walked, we recognize the attachment that we form around the things that we do carry with us, and sticks become very powerful companions as we walk. So I can totally understand the attachment that you had bonded with this stick that you had walked with for so many miles. And so that's the first part of your story. And then I think another layer to this story is the Camino wasn't done with you. There was another lesson to be had, and it wanted to hammer home. Rocco, you got to Santiago, and then you got to Finisterre, and then you still kept going, and I'm not done with you.
Yeah.
And there was one more powerful reminder that was really delivered to you in such a powerful and beautiful way. And now you being able to share that story with us this morning. Wow. And I when I was looking at your bio stuff before our interview, I was going to end this interview with, come on, Rocco, you're sitting there now in Canada. How has this Camino transformed you? And I think you already just answered that. And then when I saw some of the stuff that you're involved with now, it seems to me that your life has had some transformation, that you're involved with a lot of very worthy causes now. And I wonder if that's part of what's happened since you've walked, that you now are doing these other things. Is that part of what's
It
happened
was
for you?
huge. It was huge. Part of it. I mean, look, I've been blessed in life and done well. So there's no hair shirt and struggle. But I went away from the sort of corporate executive jobs to then spending a decade running health charities and now the Ontario Chamber of Commerce to help small business struggle through these things. And that was really the lesson that I took out of the Camino and the transformation it's had in my life. And again, it always pays back in bigger ways than you put into it. I was helpless to help Don when he died of that heart attack when we were traveling together. But I ended up for 5 years being the CEO of the Ontario Heart and Stroke Foundation, and was able to raise a fair bit of money to help in that area. And in particular, a program that I was very passionate about and remain passionate about, and that's putting defibrillators into public spaces. These are the devices that can help restart the heart when you go into cardiac arrest. Just a week or so before Christmas at Heart and Stroke, I received a call from a woman who said, "Rocco, you don't know, Mr. Rossi, you don't know who I am, but my name is Claudia from Hamilton." I won't use their names because I don't want to embarrass them, but said, "Look, my dad was going to an event at Cops Coliseum in Hamilton a few days ago, and he collapsed on the stairs from cardiac arrest. And the paramedics told us afterwards that he would have been dead by the time they got there, if not for the fact that cops had a defibrillator on the wall and staff trained in CPR. And that bought him the time for them to treat him." And so I just want you to know, because we talked to the people at Cops to thank them. They said, no, Heart and Stroke put these defibrillators on. And so I phoned the Heart and Stroke, and they said, no, Rocco led this campaign to get it. You need to speak to him. And so our family just wants you to know that that we're celebrating Christmas with our dad instead of going to his wake. And as it happens, their dad's name was Don. I couldn't help the first Don, but the second Don was saved, and now dozens of people around the province through this campaign are being saved every year. And more than any corporate deal I ever did, more than anything I've ever bought, that has brought so much joy and fulfillment to my life. And again, that path came from that pain of the loss of Don, and the reimagining of what I could do with my life that came out of the thinking that the Camino provided me the opportunity to do.
That is a really touching story. I mean, just so full of love and so full of inspiration, and showing people that, after grief, what can come out of that. And I think, thank goodness that day on the subway that you found that article, that the timing of Rob's article sitting there was Rob, right? Is that?
Yeah, Rob Crew. Someone you should definitely interview at some point. It's just a wonderful, wonderful man, great storyteller.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to him now, because I think, he plays a part in your story, and thinking now of the countless people that might be saved by the work that you were led to after this tragedy. You took this tragedy and processed your grief and came to the Camino and made this huge change in your life. And we'll never know how many people that's going to touch. And wow, that's magic. That is beyond magic, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I have the right human words to put around it,
Oh.
but if someone is not convinced to walk now, I don't know what might convince them. So I think we'll stop there. And I feel so grateful that you have come to share this. And I'm so happy that you have found a way beyond your grief and have been able to turn that around and serve others. I think there's no better, I don't know if it's a gift of grief, but there's no better way to pay it forward and to help others. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for coming today to the Camino Cafe. I think I could talk to you for endless hours.
Thank you so much for creating the space, and also just love your opening music. And the message is absolutely right and reinforces, the things that I need in life are already there. We are all creatures of magic. We're all creatures of the divine. The Camino allows us to shed those things and see that in others. But important to bring it back to the other Camino where there are no yellow arrows except in your heart, and to follow those.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Rocco. That's for folks who are unaware, that he's referring to the song that I've been gifted to use for the podcast, which is by Jackson Maloney. And Jackson also is a fellow pilgrim, and it's the original song that he wrote after arriving in Finisterre. And that song really touches me too. And Jackson was so kind to allow me to use that. So we will close out this interview. So that those that are listening, keep listening, because I will make sure Jackson's song closes out this interview so you can hear the song that Rocco's referring to. And Rocco, please stay on so we can personally say goodbye. But I'm going to end this. I knew this was going to be a great conversation, but had no idea the places it would go. And I just thank you for being so willing to share so vulnerably your stories. It's motivated me, and you've reignited my spirit for sure today. So thank you. To everyone listening, wow, if you've been touched by this story, I would really appreciate maybe commenting on Facebook or on YouTube to give some love back to Rocco and to encourage him to keep on his path. And Rocco and I think I could speak for both of us in saying that we love the pilgrim spirit and the companionship of fellow pilgrims. So your comments really do mean a lot, and your support of this little project of mine. When you make a comment, it keeps me going. So, and I'm sure it will keep Rocco going in his work. So please share the love. And if you've been touched by this episode, please share it. I only have so many people that, are listening each week. And if you know somebody that needs to hear what Rocco's been talking about today, please send them, just share this with them. It's, you never know what it might ignite in them and cause them to start just like Rocco started. And your sharing that could make a difference in somebody else's life. So enough said. So thank you, everyone. Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.
Cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. I am free, free as a bird now, with my feathered wings. I am free, free as a bird now, with my feathers